Hello, so today I'm joined by Abhi Banik and Stephen Russell from the Copper Rivet Distillery. Thank you very much for joining me today, guys. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Thanks for having us, Richard.
No, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting to me, because I guess this week for you guys is a very busy week and also a very exciting week, because for those that don't know, this week you're launching your first ever fully legal and matured whiskey.
Yeah, that's right. It's at the same time the end of a very, very long journey, more than a decade in the making, and I guess the beginning of the journey as well. So yeah, we launched yesterday Masthouse Single Malt Whisky, which is our pot distilled single malt, and is the first of our 3 core expressions, which we'll be releasing over the next 12 to 24 months, with column malt and grain whiskey to come.
Fantastic. Well, and we'll go on and talk a little bit about the whiskey in a moment, but perhaps you could take us back over a little bit. I know it's of course very difficult to talk for a few minutes, condense 10 years into a few minutes, but I wonder if you can give me a brief sketch of how Copper Rivet started and a little bit about your background and how you got to the stage now of releasing your first whiskey.
The better you get to know me, the more you will know that it's incredibly hard for me to condense anything into a few minutes of talking. I am nothing if not verbose, but I will try. So my family, through my dad, been in the booze business generally for more than my whole life, but always importing, distributing, repackaging, and so on and so forth. My brother's been in that business for a very long time, decades as well. And we always sort of had an internal family discussion about how it would be amazing to create, if you like, if it's not too grand, a legacy by creating our own brands in our own, with our own philosophy and our own ethos. And that's where we set out to create Copper Rivet Distillery. Right at the beginning of the journey, we recognized that none of us were distillers, and that to do this credibly, we need someone who was a distiller. And Abhi and I met right at the beginning of the journey, his co-founder, at Heriot Watt, where he was teaching brewing and distilling, and in my naivety, but blessed naivety, as it turns out, that seemed like probably somebody who was going to be quite good at brewing and distilling, and it turns out we were right. So Abhi joined the team right at the beginning, and we set out to create the distillery. I mean, just very quickly on our sort of shared philosophy. We are not, we're completely self-funded, no crowdfunding, no big investors, nothing, completely self-funded. And we're also not marketeers. So you could argue it's a slightly foolish endeavor, but as part of that, we thought really, really hard, particularly when it came to clear spirit, because we're multidisciplinary, about how we could create a business that would be sustainable, and how we would be able to differentiate ourselves in a very, very crowded marketplace. And of course, that led us to being a farm to glass distillery for clear spirits, which in any case, it's pretty hard to not be grain to glass and make whiskey, which was something we had a big ambition to do. So those went hand in hand, and perhaps that's one of the differences with us, that we not only use our grain to glass process for making whiskey, but also for our clear spirits, which is one of the reasons that I would say that we have, let's say, added scarcity, because we're not only producing whiskey through our brew kit and through our stills. We're also making clear spirits. So it's very scarce, but it is something. The brewing part of it, the growing the grain, is really at the core of what we do all the way across all of our range. And you know, Abby's the person to talk about that, but that's really, you know, how it started and how we came about being farm to glass. And there are lots of other things that came up along the way, which meant that, you know, as we thought about equipment that we might use, you know, we didn't, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but, you know, we didn't fly any, you know, any of the big usual suspects down from Scotland to help us figure out what equipment to use and to install it. We designed it all ourselves, and we had it made by local craftsmen. And part of the reason for that is that where we're based, which is my hometown, as you hear, it's Abby's adopted town, is that we're based in a historic dockyard, which was in its heyday almost the industrial capital of the world, the largest industrial complex on earth, with huge amounts of ingenuity, engineering prowess, and innovation. And in many senses, that inspired us to be really ambitious. Make the kit ourselves using local craftsmen, and that has also meant that you know, we have equipment that does what we want in the way that we want it, and that comes through in the spirit, which is ultimately the most important thing.
Great. And is that where the name, the Copper Rivet, comes from? Is that a hark back to those traditional kind of dock and shipbuilding and that kind of industrial past, or is it linked to the building that you're in?
Exactly. When you come and visit, when anyone comes and visits, you can see the Copper Rivet that was discovered on the floor. So the building that we're in is a 19th century pump that was used to pump the docks dry and then pump water back into them from the River Medway. Enormous Victorian kind of cathedral-esque building that we're so lucky to have. But when we took it, it was completely derelict. It had been decommissioned when the dockyard closed, to the loss of, well, economic devastation, like happens everywhere where dockyards closed. And from 1983 to when we moved in at the end of 2015, the building was derelict. There was no floor. There was no electricity, gas, water. There was nothing. It was a derelict shell. And in the floor of that shell, there was a copper rivet, which we still have. I think we still have. We've just done a renovation, so hopefully we haven't lost it.
Well, you definitely should. You should put that in like one of those, you know, when you go to a distillery, you know, like in Scotland somewhere, and they've got a 50-year-old, you know, whiskey or something that's in this cabinet with all lights, you know, put on it. You should get the little copper rivet and put it in one of those. It's got a nice little story, or bring it out of the case on the tour that you do, you know, every so often. That'd be quite sweet. Maybe you've been sitting there very nice and patiently, Abby. So maybe I should bring you in here. When Stephen and you met, you know, how did he sort of persuade you to come on board as head distiller for Copper Rivet? Was it something that you were, you know, initially skeptical, or was it a project that you were very excited straight away to come and join?
I was always very keen on distilling, actually distillery setup, equipment design. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, yes, yeah. The line's a little bit, but yeah. I can hear you okay, yeah.
Okay, so that has always been what I wanted to do, is a distillery setup, equipment design, product development. So what you call a complete bespoke distillery. This is one thing that I always wanted to do. So when Stephen presented the idea, that was very difficult to refuse. When it comes to actually, also another thing always interests me is the width of different products, just not vodka, just not gin, just not whiskey, though they each takes its time to develop. But at least what the idea Stephen shared at that time, and the most important thing, the weather he promised, all these things, it was very difficult to refuse. It's only when I
Oh, we lost you for a
came
moment there. Can
down
you hear
in
us?
Scotland,
Oh, there
and
you're back.
tad bit drier. So apart from that, everything was too attractive. In a way, starting a distillery where you can design your own equipment, speak to farmers to grow your own grains. So to be very fair, a complete distillery with a complete control. That's what interested me, and I was hooked straight away.
Fantastic. And so when you guys were, you mentioned there that you had the stills, designed to your own specifications and, made by local craftsmen, which is pretty fantastic. So did you have an idea yourself, Abhi, of the kind of whiskey that you wanted to create, or particularly, of course, we're talking a bit more about the whiskey side of things here. Did you have a specific idea of the kind of style that you wanted to create in terms of, would it be more fruity or a little bit more spicy, a bit more woody? Did you have kind of a vision for the whiskey that you ultimately wanted to create?
Well, from the start itself, Stephen, Matthew, and Bob, they had a clear vision of the type of whiskey or the style of whiskey they wanted. Not very specific to one category or, we want to recreate this. So it all comes from their experience and from maybe their drinking style. They said, okay, what we see, we would like to produce a whiskey which is light and fruity, not peaty at all.
Okay.
So we started with that criteria. So this is the style of whiskey that we want to create. But because we will be a whiskey, actually, to be very frank, when we started talking about this was meant to be a gin distillery.
Oh,
and
okay.
then we talked about how can we make it a gin distillery indifferent than rest of most of the gin distillery that's popping up, or can we say getting set up. So we said provenance is going to be very important, and not only provenance of botanicals if we can, which is very difficult, but provenance of the alcohol that goes in it, because the gin, if you think 96% of it is alcohol. So we said, okay, to set up a gin distillery with provenance, we need to have a setup where we make our own alcohol, which is going to make it 5 times more expensive to make the gin. But that is the only way we can make our dockyard gin different, and we'll have the clarity for the customer, so they know where it's coming from. They know which farmer is growing the grains. So now when we're designing it, because we're making our neutral ourselves, we said, fine, if we are making our neutral, we can make a vodka as well. That's how the vodka came into picture. And then because we are having a brew house still, then come the idea, why not make our whiskey as well at the same time?
Yeah.
So this is how this product has been added in the line. And then this is exactly how we launched our product as well. So we started with our dockyard gin, then we launched our Vela vodka, then we launched our new make, Son of a Gun, Son of a Sea, and then whiskey after 3 years we're launching. That's how it actually, the idea was developed as well. So all of these came from the style, the house style that they wanted to have. It's a light fruitier style there. And you see all our product portfolio is around like that.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm sorry, it's a whiskey talk, and I'm talking about dockyard gin and Vela vodka.
No,
it is because how it is linked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the equipment design then came into picture, because as we know, the equipment are very important to create the flavors, because here we create flavor from the start. selecting the grain, for example. We chose to start with Belgravia barley, is because that was suitable for both malt whiskey, grain whiskey, and neutral production. So that's why the grain was selected. Then the brew house, if you consider, because we want to create a variety of products from whiskey and neutral alcohol and different styles of whiskey in the future, where we might need different kind of temperature profiling for brewing. So we created a brew house, two-vessel brew house, where we have a conversion, temperature profiling equipment, or MCB that we have, and then a mash conversion vessel. And then we also have a lauter tun just to separate. It also increases the efficiency of the process time-wise. You can have multiple, we can have multiple brews in a day, and also temperature profiling, creating flavors. So for example, you know, when you're doing malt whiskey, as everybody knows, starting temperature is of 63 degrees are okay. But when we're doing grain whiskey, and our grain mix is not as simple as when we say it's a 80% wheat, 20% of malt. No, for us, it is made with 3 grains and malt. So we use raw wheat, raw barley, raw rye, and we use a little bit of malted barley. So it's a very complex mash bill. And I still remember in the starting days when we were doing a mashing trial, and for 2 months we had to do a trial because we just couldn't get the right, runoff. And I've spoke to many of my friends from different breweries, brewmasters and all. And one question they all asked, actually a comment they made, are you mad? Why do you have 80% of raw grains with so much of gluten in it and all these things? Are you mad? I was like, this is what the flavor required. So because our aim was for a flavor that we want, with the grains and everything. So that is why. So it took us 2 months to go through the brewing process to create a brew profile. So after that is the fermentation. We tried with several different yeast categories. And it was quite fascinating to see how the yeast creates the different flavors. At the same time, we're a very small team. We're a very small team. You can complicate a process as much as you want. But if you have to do it every day without pulling your hair, which I do not have much left, you need to cut down your variables. So again, we settled down in 2 yeast varieties to create different flavor structure. And we bring in temperature profiling for creating flavors. Length of fermentation, we kept the same. We saw that 7-day fermentation was giving the fruity flavor. Low temperature fermentation and 7-day created the fruity tropical fruit flavor.
Oh, so you said 7 days. That's it's quite long, isn't it? Yeah. Yes,
it's very long, and it gives the fruity flavor that you will see in each and every product that Copper Rivet produces.
Yeah.
So the 7-day fermentation, and then coming up to the distillation after that, you know. So it's all been meticulously designed from the start, theoretically, and then we matched it up practically while making it. So yes, for us. So now come to your question. Yes, when we did the whiskey, we designed it in a light fruity style whiskey with a lot of tropical fruits. And I'm very pleased to say that it has all the things that we desired 3 years down the line.
Well, I tried your Son of the Seas, and that was, I think that was at the English Whisky Festival, and I thought it was great. It was just exactly what you described there. It was light and floral, but there was those tropical kind. There was like a coconutty kind of backdrop in there as well, and all sorts of little flavors that I picked up. And it was, you know, that day of tasting whiskies. Sometimes when you taste whiskies, you know, you try quite a few, and then you have to go off and refresh your palate every so often. And by the time I got to the Son of the Seas, it was a real change. It was something very different, and it stuck out. And it's something that I remembered because it was a different kind of characteristic to a lot of the others. Still very, very much a whiskey, but it just stood out to me. So I think there was a lot of people that were watching on that day as well that thought, oh, this is pretty special. They're doing something quite interesting here. Perhaps Stephen, I could bring you back in here. Now I've heard about, because obviously, and as Abhi and yourself have just mentioned there, you're very serious about where your grains come from, the processes, and making things, all yourself. Like you've got a very DIY approach to everything. And one thing that you've also added, and I've seen on your website, is the Invicta Whisky Charter, which in English whiskey at the moment, there's a lot of debate, and something I've spoken to many people about in terms of, where does whiskey go, in English whiskey go, and do we need something like a charter that says this is an English whiskey? And I know that that's not quite what you've created, but you've created your own whiskey charter to say all the whiskey that we make from this point on will adhere to these rules. And I think a lot of what's in there, I think, makes a great case for further English whiskey, production outside of what you're doing. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the background of the Invicta Whisky Charter and how that came about.
Sure. And yeah, thanks for your comments on it. As you've said, we put a huge amount of effort into all of the steps in the process that goes into everything that we do, all of our spirits, and whiskey in particular. And we were, the first thing we want to do is, to many people, English whiskey is unknown, and we are an unknown quantity. And the easiest way that we can convey to a consumer, without them having to try the whiskey, how serious we are about flavor and how serious we are about doing everything to the, going the extra mile all the way through, is by putting it down on paper and giving them the clarity. And then making a commitment that whenever you buy or taste the Masthouse Whisky product, it will have been made in accordance with those standards that we set out. So that was our main driver. I think we did that in a way in isolation to the issue, which is the broader English whiskey question. And, we're involved in that discussion. We're active participants in that discussion. But at the time that we wrote it, we felt that it certainly wasn't our place, not even having an English whiskey, to go around saying that these should be the standards for English whiskey. And that's why we were very, very particular about saying, these are our standards. This is how we make it. And I also think that we, if we were to think about the broader growing category that is English whiskey, I think you want to leave some breadth and some bandwidth in there, where we've got the Invicta Whisky Charter, which is clearly intrinsically linked to, let's say, whiskey made in Kent, with as Invicta is that is our ancient name. But why not have a charter for another area that defines the way that other distilleries might like to make their whiskey, and that's not really for us to try to restrict anybody else, and that's key. We don't want to be restrictive, as you said. There are things that have happened all over the world, and we wanted to take inspiration from best practices worldwide, and codify those in the way that we do things. But there are also things where, opportunities to be a bit more flexible and to play around, where we think it can add to the spirit, and add to the consumer enjoyment. And we wanted to leave flexibility in there too.
Absolutely. Well, I've read through it, and I think that's it's a good, a lot of what you've put in there, I kind of agree with and think is very sensible standards that, of course, it's a personal thing for you, but I think it could be looked at by other distilleries as well as a real kind of, I think it's quite a good document you put together there. So a lot of the point, there's a few in there that maybe I think, but there's a bit of discussion to be had there. But if it's your charter, then I think good on you for kind of doing that and stating that. I think it's a good thing. Now, of course, that's moving us on nicely to one thing that, of course, is very exciting this week, is that you've now, as a distillery, you've reached that milestone of releasing your first whiskey, your first single malt whiskey, which is Masthouse Whisky. And as I understand, it's kind of currently available on your website for pre-order from, as we speak, today. I think, what date is it? 17th of November, isn't it today? So lose
That's
track
right.
of the days with all this kind of lockdown, that lockdown thing. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the whiskey. I think, Abhi, bring you back in. I think you've got a bottle of the whiskey beside you there. If you're able to show us, and maybe you can talk us through how that fits in with your house style, and you can look a few tasting notes behind the whiskey and how it's tasting now.
Can I just interrupt? I'm really surprised
yes,
to see that it's a full bottle, because I tell you, it's pretty hard to keep them full.
Is it? Well, the first thing I noticed about that packaging, it's it's a very visually, it's also very nice. Straight away you can see, so it's appealing in that sense. I like the box there, and it looks like it's one of the flasks sort of shaped bottles, is it? I can see there.
Yeah, it's a flask. Sorry, Abhi, I didn't give you a chance. It's a flask, very, very nice, tactile, very, very nice feeling.
So maybe Abhi, if you can maybe talk us through. There's one of the empty bottles, or nearly empty bottles. Yeah, I think I would have a bit of a job, working there, and I'd want to be trying it myself. So yeah, maybe if you could talk us through, Abhi, like what are the sort of tasting notes, and how did you go about selecting the casks, and what casks were used for this release?
Right. So first of all, about casks. So as we talked about, that we were very specific about our house style, and because we were completely a new distillery in the market, we felt it was very important for us to explain to people what is our house style. Because if you think all the established distillers, they have got experience, or people know the whiskies from hundreds of years. So everybody understands what is a house style. So now they're presenting different finishes and all these things. They're showing their skills. So for us, it was very important first to explain people our house style. So we did not go overbound with different cask finishes or expressions. We're very simple about our fruity floral notes so that people can understand. So we went with ex-bourbon. Being our standard house cask. We have some virgin oak as well, and we are doing quite a few experiments with different toasting and char levels. But for this launch, and which will be our flagship in malt whiskey, Masthouse malt whiskey, we have used ex-bourbon cask. And we have used virgin oak cask with high toast, medium char, or number 2 charring, what we call it. And flavor-wise, how we have designed it, it has got, from the start itself, you'll have green apple coming through with layers of ginger biscuit on the nose, with huge amount of tropical fruit and floral mid-notes. And when you have sipping it slowly and leaving it in your tongue for some time, you'll see slowly toasted oak, chocolate orange appears in your palate, and it has got a beautiful long malt and white pepper aftertaste. I also find quite white chocolate fudge coming through as well. So so these are all the flavors how I describe in small, without going too long about the description. Yeah.
No, well, those are some of them. There's some of those notes there that you mentioned. There's certainly ones that I picked up on the Son of the Seas that I tried, which I'd say I thoroughly enjoyed and really got my attention, to you guys, and so it's nice to see that continues. As you say, you've gone for a kind of certain house style that picks up all of those things that's now gone into this first release. the first release of Masthouse there. So is this one that's released going to be a limited run, a limited edition, and then your subsequent kind of house style whiskies are going to follow a similar kind of profile, or is this one going to be quite a unique? And we're going to see the house style develop even further in the future.
So when we say may I quickly comment on this? So
sure.
Stephen will explain it in detail. So when we say Masthouse Single Malt Whisky, this is going to be our house style on that, and it is always going to be available. But because we're a small distillery, we are limited by number. So to explain, so this is going to be like that. So I'll leave it further to Stephen. I think because I have complicated our whiskey portfolio already. So
yeah, absolutely. So I think where we're a little bit different, Richard, is that we think in vintages. Because we're farm to glass, and we're thinking 2 years ahead for vintages, and then the aging and so on and so forth. So this is single malt whiskey, pot distilled, is a core expression, one of 3 core expressions that we'll be releasing. The other 2 later this year, and therefore it is something in its flavor profile which will reoccur. It is, though, limited, and that is a function, of course, of the nature of being a new whiskey distillery, in particular a self-funded one, but also for us, I think, especially that it is limited by its vintage. It having been made from barley, harvested in August 2016. I love to say both. Maybe I should be a competition. Yes and yes. Core expression, it will reoccur in its form, and the other 2, the column malt that will come out in probably midsummer, and the grain later, are thematically expressions that will go on into perpetuity. Of course, they'll evolve, but the essence. But for now, it is limited.
Well, as I've already said, some of the reports that I've had from people that have already been lucky enough to try a few samples of this have all been very, very positive. And in fact, I got a comment from, I'll remain nameless for now, but I got a comment from one friend who's fairly well known, and just put, this stuff is really good. So there's some great news for you guys. I'm excited to try. I think we were going to do this conversation towards the end of the week, but just because of childcare arrangements and things, we've kind of pulled it a little bit earlier. But I'm very excited to try the reason. I've actually pre-ordered one on your website as well for myself. So I'm looking forward to getting that. We had a conversation before we started this, and you mentioned that sales are already going pretty well. So you've so I guess people this will be uploaded. Like it's the 17th of November today, so this will be uploaded probably tomorrow, the 18th. So by the time people see this, they better get there quick if they want to secure a bottle of your first release.
Yeah, that's kind of you to say it. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people from both whiskey, whiskey enjoying community, and of course our local community have been waiting a while. So it's true that there's been a bit of a surge in demand, which is great. It's great to be able to provide some enjoyment as well in these moments. And we had a few website stability issues actually because of the surge.
Oh wow!
Both fixed, and we're really happy with with how it's going. And what's really great is that it's going to get out there to people, and I really hope that people don't buy it and stick it at the back of the shelf, you know, hoping that, in the hope that it will appreciate in value, but actually buy it and drink it, because that's what we made it for. And it came not to drink it because it's so lovely.
Absolutely. And I think, well, maybe, I don't know if maybe you guys have already got something planned, but I know a few English whiskey distilleries that have, and others, you know, in general, that have released whiskies that have become, you know, sold out very quickly, have had sort of campaigns, you know, social media campaigns where you open a bottle and post it, and of you enjoying it with your friends or sharing. Well, a bit difficult with the friends at the moment, but but with you on your own or with your family. But it'd be nice if there's something like that where people can post and enjoy the whiskey. Oh, I think Abhi's been inspired to have a little nip there, which is, I'm very jealous now looking at that.
This is the only reason that I go into the distillery every day now, but I was forced to work from home today, and I haven't got any here. So.
Well, I bet.
But it was very unresistible. That's why. It was very unresistible, actually. It was very unresistible sitting in front of it.
Well, it's making me a little bit jealous now, so I'm looking forward to receiving mine, so I can join you and see how it is. It looks great, and so I love the way it's presented as well. It looks really nice. And are you gonna, actually, it's one thing, is it going to be sold purely through your website and your kind of shop, I guess, or is it going to going to any retailers as well?
No, I mean, look, we the way that we've approached it, we right now, we thought that the demand from people who had already signed up, that we didn't want to disappoint those people. There is therefore no point in us, you know, putting it into retail. There isn't enough to go into retail to satisfy retail's needs. So, you know, for now, no. We have made an allocation available to wholesalers for independent retail and the on trade, such as it exists. But no, there are no large retail multiples. So I think Master of Malt are not live with it yet, but it will be live on Master of Malt. And then there is a continental European outlet called Whisky Centre, who have an allocation for continental Europe distribution. It's very hard for us to do that from the distillery. So yeah, mainly through us right now until Master of Malt go live, which I think will be in the next couple of days, also for pre-order.
Fantastic. Well, now I better let you guys get on. I'm sure there's say it's a busy week for you, and I'm sure there's lots of things that you've got to arrange. And fairly soon you're going to have to be packing up all of these bottles and sending them out. And I don't want to keep Abhi away from the stills for too long. So there's some great spirit to be made today, I'm sure. So I thank you both, you know, so much for joining me for this chat today, and good luck with the launch of the whiskey. It's a great new addition to the English whiskey, sort of growing in the English whiskey scene, and perhaps I can check back with you guys in a few weeks or months, and we can have a chat about some of the future plans for Copper Rivet, and also I'd love to come and see you and actually come and see that Copper Rivet. Yeah, cool. And it's just worth saying that, you know, we you mentioned the Invicta Whisky Charter. So we are including a copy of the Invicta Whisky Charter in each one of those boxes. So, you know, so you don't have to go on the website to have a look at it. You can, you know, when you get your box, you'll have your own copy, and then you'll be able to hold us to it for the future. I'm not sure we thought through the implications of that, maybe. But. Yeah, maybe. That's it. Yeah, free bottle of whiskey to everyone if we break it, which is no bad thing. But no, thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I'll let you get back to all the busy sort of work that you need to do, and yeah, really appreciate it. And thank you very much for joining me. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.